Whether you are currently trapped in the labyrinth of a psychological manipulator, carrying the heavy scars of a past survival, or simply forging your mind to prevent a future attack. If you have ever crossed paths with a predator, you recognize the signs. You know the exact suffocating sensation, the cold sweat forming on the back of your neck, the profound aching exhaustion that settles deep into your bones after yet another conversation where you somehow ended up apologizing for an offense you did not commit. You spend hours in the dark, staring at the ceiling, meticulously replaying the dialogue in your head. You frantically search for the exact moment where the conversation derailed, desperately trying to understand how your simple attempt to establish a boundary was violently twisted into a narrative where you are the absolute villain. You live your life walking on eggshells, meticulously managing your tone, filtering your own words, and shrinking your own existence, just to avoid waking the predator that sleeps in your home, your workplace, or your family. You feel as though you are losing your grip on reality, constantly second-guessing your own memory. But the sovereign mind must look at this agonizing confusion through the cold, surgical lens of neurobiology. You are not losing your sanity, and you are not fundamentally broken. Your brain is currently the victim of a highly calculated biological hijacking. The toxic individual, the narcissist, has been biologically trained by years of predatory survival to completely bypass your logical mind. By hurling absurd accusations and twisting reality, they intentionally induce severe cognitive dissonance. This psychological shock injects a massive spike of cortisol directly into your bloodstream, forcefully shutting down your prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and reason, and triggering an acute amygdala hijack. Your nervous system is no longer engaging in a dialogue. It is fighting for its literal survival against a projected phantom. Today, we will dismantle the architecture of this psychological terrorism. We will reveal the 4 phases of the 5-second override, a lethal neuro-linguistic command designed to induce a catastrophic failure in the narcissist's biological script. Pay absolute undivided attention to the discourse today, because the 4th and final phase, the absolute void, is the most dangerous and liberating threshold you will ever face. It is the exact coordinate where 99% of intelligent, empathetic souls fail, because it requires the absolute, unapologetic assassination of your own ego's desperate desire to be right. If you are ready to drop the illusion and reclaim your sovereign mind, walk with me now. To master the 5-second override and freeze the manipulator in their tracks, we must first strip away the fundamental illusion of what a conversation with a narcissist actually is. This brings us to the first phase, the anatomy of the red cape. The greatest vulnerability of a noble, empathetic human being is the projection of their own morality onto others. You operate under the catastrophic assumption that the person standing across from you is seeking resolution, harmony, and truth. You believe that if you simply find the perfect sequence of words, if you present the undeniable objective facts with enough patience and love, they will finally understand your perspective and the chaos will cease. You must incinerate this belief immediately. A manipulator does not engage in dialogue to solve a problem. They engage in psychological warfare to extract biological resources. In the realm of clinical psychology, this is known as narcissistic supply, but in the ancient martial and energetic arts, it is the direct extraction of your chi, your vital, cellular life force. The narcissist operates from a core of profound, terrifying emptiness. They are a psychological black hole, entirely incapable of generating their own internal validation, self-worth, or emotional regulation. To feel powerful, to feel significant, and to experience a sudden, intoxicating spike of dopamine, they must force you into a state of chaotic reaction. Your emotional distress is their biological nourishment. Your frustration is the exact currency that funds their artificial superiority. To truly visualize this deadly dynamic, we must look to the blood, the dust, and the lethal grace of the arena. Consider the ancient, brutal spectacle of the matador and the bull. The bull is a creature of immense, magnificent power. It possesses enough pure kinetic energy to completely destroy the matador in a fraction of a second. The bull is the empath, full of life, force, and deep emotional capacity. But the matador does not fight the bull with brute strength. That would be biological suicide. Instead, the matador uses a highly calculated, deceptive psychological weapon, the muleta, the bright red cape. When the matador waves the red cape, the bull's primitive neurological instincts are instantly triggered. The bull lowers its massive head and violently charges at the fabric. It strikes the cape with all of its magnificent might, expending massive amounts of metabolic energy. But what does it actually hit? Empty air. The cape is a manufactured illusion. The matador has gracefully stepped slightly off the center line, completely untouched by the bull's rage. The bull turns around, panting, bleeding its vital energy into the hot sand, and charges the cape again and again and again until it is completely exhausted, confused, and eventually brought to its knees by its own unmanaged kinetic energy. In the psychological arena of your daily life, the narcissist is the matador. The absurd accusation, the sudden gaslighting, the weaponization of your past mistakes, and the blatant twisting of your reality. These are the red capes. When the manipulator looks you in the eye and casually rewrites history or accuses you of a malicious intent you never possessed, your ego is instantly triggered. Terrified of being misunderstood and desperate to protect your honor, you lower your head and charge. You raise your voice. You present your meticulous timeline of facts. You passionately defend your character, desperately trying to destroy the lie. You attack the red cape. And in that exact fraction of a second, the narcissist simply steps out of the way. They watch you thrash, cry, and defend yourself against an illusion. As you pour your soul out trying to make them understand, they are not listening to your words. They are feeding on your panic. They feel a profound surge of dominance because they have successfully hijacked your emotional weather. You are burning massive amounts of your own ATP, your cellular energy, trying to prove your innocence to an entity that does not care about the truth. They only care that you are charging exactly when they command you to. Every single time you explain yourself, every time you argue with their fabricated reality, you are the bull bleeding out in the dust. You cannot logic your way out of the arena. You cannot convince the matador to put the cape away by being reasonable. If you wish to survive the labyrinth of their mind games, you must execute a profound biological divergence. You must stop looking at the red fabric, and you must begin to see the empty space behind it. We must step into the second phase of our mastery. We must move from the frantic, exhausting charge of the prey into the cold, terrifying stillness of the sovereign observer. We must step out of the arena, manipulate the very fabric of time, and learn how to execute the temporal rift. To defeat a psychological predator, you must understand the invisible rhythm of their attack. A manipulator does not merely rely on the cruelty of their words. They rely entirely on the absolute speed of your reaction. Their entire strategy is built on momentum. When they wave the red cape, when they hurl a fabricated insult, an unfair criticism, or a blatant lie, they expect your response to follow within a fraction of a millisecond. Why? Because the narcissist intuitively understands a profound neurobiological truth. If they give you enough time to process their words through your prefrontal cortex, you will easily see through their pathetic illusion. Therefore, they must rush you. They must induce a state of immediate biological panic. They rely on the rapid-fire ping-pong dynamic of an argument. They throw the toxic ball, and your ego instantly catches it and throws it back. This rapid, chaotic exchange is the exact friction that generates the dopamine they are desperately feeding on. To shatter their control, you do not need to hit the ball back harder. You simply need to let the ball drop to the floor. You must weaponize time. In the ancient, lethal disciplines of Japanese and Shaolin martial arts, there is a profound, foundational concept known as Ma. Ma does not translate to a physical strike or a block. It translates to negative space, the gap or the pause. It is the interval between two structural parts. The amateur fighter focuses entirely on the speed and the impact of the punch. But the grandmaster focuses entirely on the ma, the empty space between the opponent's strike and their own response. The master understands that whoever controls the negative space controls the entire reality of the combat. You must apply this exact martial philosophy to your linguistics. You must introduce a brutal, unapologetic gap into the conversation. You must execute the 5-second override. Here is the exact, clinical execution of the override. You are standing in the room. The manipulator looks at you and delivers their calculated strike. They accuse you of something absurd. They attempt to rewrite a memory, or they use a passive-aggressive tone designed specifically to trigger your defense mechanism. Your primitive brain, your amygdala, will instantly scream at you to react. Your chest will tighten, your breath will migrate up into your clavicle, and the words of your defense will rush to the tip of your tongue. This is the exact coordinate where you must execute absolute biological discipline. You drop heavy iron gates on your mouth. You do not speak. You do not sigh. You do not roll your eyes or shake your head in disbelief. You do absolutely nothing. Instead, you consciously force your breathing out of your chest and pull it deep into the heavy, silent anchor of the dantian, inches below your navel. You relax your jaw. You look them directly in the eyes with a flat, dead, completely unreadable expression. You become a statue carved from dark, freezing granite. And then, you count in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 seconds of absolute, suffocating, unbroken silence. To a normal, healthy human being, a 5-second pause in a conversation feels slightly unnatural. But to a narcissist, a manipulator, or an emotional parasite who is desperately waiting for the dopamine hit of your reaction, 5 seconds is an absolute, agonizing eternity. It is a psychological eternity that completely crashes their neurological script. We must examine exactly what happens inside the brain of the predator during this temporal rift. When they hurled the insult, they cast a line into the water, fully expecting the immediate, violent tug of the fish taking the bait. Their brain was already preparing the next phase of the argument, anticipating your defense. But when you introduce 5 seconds of dead silence, their expectation hits a massive, impenetrable brick wall. You have essentially created a 404 error in their central nervous system. Because you did not provide the noise of your reaction, you have created a vacuum. And in the absence of your chaotic defense, the manipulator's own toxic, absurd statement is left hanging in the heavy, dead air of the room. They are suddenly forced to listen to the echo of their own delusion. They threw a heavy punch, expecting to hit the solid bone of your ego, but instead, they fell forward into empty space. During those 5 seconds, the dynamic of power completely flips. The narcissist begins to feel deeply exposed and profoundly uncomfortable. Their subconscious mind registers that their spell has not worked. The silence becomes a mirror, and parasites are absolutely terrified of mirrors. Without your frantic kinetic energy to distract them, they begin to feel the crushing weight of their own emptiness. They will often squirm, break eye contact, or frantically attempt to fill the silence with backpedaling or further rambling, completely losing the dominant frame of the interaction. By simply commanding your biology to wait 5 seconds, you have projected an aura of terrifying, absolute sovereignty. You have silently communicated to their nervous system. Your words hold absolutely no weight in my empire. Your provocation is so insignificant, so deeply uninteresting, that it does not even warrant an immediate response from my biology. You have starved the predator. You have denied them the friction they require to survive. But the execution of the 5-second override is only the opening maneuver. The silence stops the blade from cutting your flesh, but eventually, the 5 seconds will end and the temporal rift will close. You cannot remain silent forever, because the predator will interpret absolute silence as submission or passive-aggressive punishment, and they will simply change their angle of attack. When the 5 seconds expire, you must break the silence, but you must not break it with your old weapons. You must not break it with logic, with defense, or with emotion. You must strike back using a method so minimal, so incredibly elusive, that the manipulator realizes they are entirely outmatched. You have successfully executed the temporal rift. For 5 agonizing heavy seconds, you became an impenetrable wall of dark stone. You watched as the heavy silence suffocated their momentum, leaving their toxic provocation hanging utterly exposed. But when the silence concludes, the gates must open, and you must speak. This is the exact coordinate where the amateur makes a catastrophic tactical error. They hold the silence brilliantly, but when they finally open their mouths, they immediately revert to their old, predictable weapons. They falsely believe that the 5-second pause gave the narcissist enough time to calm down, and that now, logic and reason will finally penetrate their delusion. The amateur begins to present their defense. They explain their intentions. They try to establish a timeline of objective facts. You must incinerate this instinct. You cannot present a legal defense to a predator. To a narcissist, your highly intelligent, well-structured logical argument is not a pathway to peace. It is simply a different flavor of friction. The exact fraction of a second you begin to explain yourself, the 5-second override is completely undone. You have materialized out of the shadows. You have picked up the rope, stepped right back into the arena, and lowered your head to charge the red cape. This brings us to the 3rd phase of our mastery. We must transition from the negative space of the silence into the active execution of language. We must learn how to speak without offering a single ounce of biological or semantic friction. We must forge the weapon of the phantom strike. Modern psychology often refers to this mechanism as the gray rock method, the practice of making yourself as uninteresting and unresponsive as a dull stone. But we must elevate this concept from a mere coping mechanism into a profound, impenetrable martial art. A rock is still a solid object. A rock can still be kicked, struck, and chipped away at. You must not become a rock. You must become the mist. To execute the phantom strike, you must master the neurolinguistics of the absolute void. Your words must be delivered without a single trace of energetic footprint. First, you must control the acoustic delivery of your voice. When human beings are anxious, defensive, or desperate to be understood, their vocal cords tighten, causing the pitch of their voice to rise. They speak rapidly, placing heavy emotional inflections on specific words to emphasize their pain. The narcissist's highly tuned radar detects these microscopic inflections as signs of your bleeding. To become the mist, you must forcefully drop the pitch of your voice into a flat, monotonous, robotic register. You strip every single ounce of emotion, anger, sadness, and urgency from your vocal cords. You do not speak with sarcasm, because sarcasm is a blade, and a blade is a solid object that proves you are still emotionally engaged in the fight. You speak with the clinical, freezing neutrality of a machine reporting the weather. Once the tone is mastered, we must deploy the semantic void. When the manipulator launches a fabricated insult, accuses you of a malicious intent, or attempts to rewrite the history of your relationship, you do not agree with them, and you absolutely do not deny their claim. You offer a statement that acknowledges their biological right to have an emotion, while completely rejecting their invitation to debate the reality of it. You look at them, your breathing slow, and you deliver the phantom strike. I understand that you see it that way. You are absolutely entitled to your perspective. I accept that this is your reality. We clearly remember that very differently. Okay. Do you see the magnificent lethal beauty of this linguistic architecture? You have offered them absolutely nothing to push against. If they say the sky is red and you argue that the sky is blue, you are feeding the fire. But if they scream that the sky is red and you calmly respond, I understand that is your perspective, the argument instantly suffocates. You cannot debate a phantom. You cannot have a tug of war when the person on the other side of the abyss simply opens their hands and drops the rope. To fully grasp the devastating effect this has on the predator, we must visualize the physics of a violent strike in the natural world. Imagine an enraged, heavy-handed aggressor stepping into a courtyard. He is full of chaotic, uncontrolled rage. Before him hangs a thick, dense cloud of evening mist. Believing the mist to be a solid opponent, the aggressor draws back his fist and throws a massive, violent punch, putting the entirety of his back, his shoulders, and his body weight into the strike. He intends to shatter bone. But what happens when the fist hits the mist? Absolutely nothing. The mist does not raise a shield to block the punch. The mist does not argue with the fist. It simply parts. The aggressor's heavy fist flies harmlessly through the empty air. Because there is no solid object to absorb his kinetic energy, his own massive, unmanaged momentum violently pulls him off balance. He stumbles forward, tearing his own muscles, completely exhausted and humiliated, collapsing into the dirt beneath the weight of his own strike. And the mist? The exact moment the fist passes through, the mist seamlessly reforms, entirely whole, completely unbothered, and utterly unchanged. When you deploy the phantom strike, you become the mist. The narcissist hurls their heaviest emotional manipulation, expecting the satisfying, solid impact of your tears, your anger, or your frantic defense. But they hit empty space. They stumble forward into the void. Their own chaotic energy exhausts them. Because their central nervous system is denied the dopamine hit of your reaction, their brain registers a catastrophic failure. The parasite realizes that the host has evolved a new, impenetrable armor of formlessness. They will inevitably pack up their toxic weapons and retreat into the shadows to find an easier, more reactive target. You have executed the phantom strike. You became the mist, allowing the violent, chaotic strike of the predator to pass harmlessly through your transparent boundaries. The narcissist, denied the vital biological friction they desperately craved, has stumbled forward into the empty space. They have realized that the host is no longer porous, and they have retreated. The physical room is finally quiet. The immediate danger has passed. But as you stand alone in the silence of your sanctuary, a new, far more agonizing battle begins to violently rage within the dark halls of your own mind. Defeating a psychological predator in the external world is merely a matter of mechanical, tactical discipline. It is a behavioral trick. But the true war, the final, brutal threshold of your spiritual and psychological sovereignty, is fought entirely against your own internal machinery. You have survived the encounter, but your chest is burning with an overwhelming, invisible agony. Your heart is racing. Your primitive brain is screaming at you that a profound, sickening injustice has just occurred. You let them walk away, believing their own fabricated lies. You let them paint you as the cold, uncaring villain, and you did not fight to defend your honor. This brings us to the fourth and final phase of the override. This is the ultimate, terrifying threshold where 99% of intelligent, deeply empathetic human beings completely shatter. They master the silence, they master the phantom strike, but they cannot survive the internal aftermath. To make the cloak of invisibility permanent, you must turn the heavy blade inward. We must step into the darkest, most protected chamber of the human ego, and we must perform the ultimate sacrifice. We must execute the absolute void. To understand why this step is so agonizingly difficult, we must look at the neurobiology of closure. The human brain is a meaning-making machine. It is biologically addicted to justice, resolution, and narrative completion. When a profound injustice occurs, your brain demands a cinematic ending. Deep in your subconscious, you are still harboring a lethal, toxic seed of hope. You are hoping that one day, if you just wait long enough, the narcissist will experience a sudden, miraculous epiphany. You hope they will look back, realize the sheer magnitude of the pain they caused you, fall to their knees, and offer you a genuine, weeping apology. You want them to finally see the absolute truth of your pure intentions. You must incinerate this hope right now. You must burn it to the ground and scatter its ashes into the wind. In the realm of normal human relationships, hope is a beautiful, life-sustaining force. But in the dark, twisted ecosystem of narcissistic abuse, hope is a lethal poison. It is the exact psychological chain that keeps you bound to the radiator in their basement. The sovereign mind must accept a cold, brutal, and terrifying neurological reality. The narcissist does not possess the biological hardware required to process genuine remorse. Their empathy center is fundamentally offline, waiting for a predator to validate your reality, to understand your pain, or to offer you closure, is like standing in the middle of a barren, scorching desert, looking up at a completely cloudless sky and begging it to rain. You will die of thirst, waiting for a biological impossibility. The absolute void requires the unapologetic assassination of your own ego's need to be right. It requires you to brutally sever your addiction to having the last word. To execute the absolute void, you must voluntarily let the narcissist win the argument in their own delusional mind. You must let them walk away telling a completely twisted, fabricated story to their flying monkeys, where they are the innocent martyr and you are the monster. You must let them take their distorted reality out into the world, completely unchallenged by your logic or your truth. You must surrender the overwhelming desire to clear your name in a court that is rigged by a madman. Why? Because the sovereign mind understands a profound thermodynamic truth of power. The opinion of a parasite has absolutely zero currency in the empire of a king. If a lunatic stands in the center of the village square, points at the blue sky and begins screaming that the sky is blood red, you do not stop your chariot. You do not step down into the mud, open a meteorological textbook, and spend hours burning your vital cellular energy trying to prove to the lunatic that the sky is blue. The madman's perception does not alter the molecular structure of the atmosphere. The sky remains blue, entirely undisturbed by his delusion. When you argue with the madman, you do not cure his insanity. You simply prove to the world that you are equally insane for debating him. You do not win a mind game with a narcissist by playing it more intelligently. You do not win by outsmarting them, out-arguing them, or finally cornering them with undeniable facts. You win by setting the entire chessboard on fire, turning your back to the flames, and walking out of the room forever. When you truly embrace the absolute void, a profound, irreversible biological transmutation occurs within your body. The heavy, suffocating iron chains of the trauma bond shatter into dust. You no longer care what they think of you. You no longer care what lies they spread. You realize that their chaos is not your responsibility. Their emotional regulation is not your biological mandate, and their pathetic, empty reality cannot penetrate the thick stone walls of your sovereign peace. I know the exact crushing weight of the invisible scars you carry on your back. I know the profound, agonizing exhaustion of spending years, perhaps decades, of your biological lifespan acting as a translator for a ghost. You have bled your own soul dry trying to inject reason into absolute insanity. You have maintained the peace in environments where the people around you breathed only war. You sacrificed your own sleep, your own boundaries, and your own vital energy to navigate a labyrinth that was specifically designed to break your mind. You have sat in the dark, weeping in a heavy, suffocating silence, grieving for the years you lost to someone else's manufactured chaos. You were taught that if you just tried harder, if you were just a little more patient, if you could just find the right words, you could fix them. You were lied to. You were handed a magnificent, high-performance biological vessel capable of bending reality, and you were tricked into using it as an emotional landfill for a broken machine. But you must look at your survival through a new lens. The fact that you are standing here today, still possessing the capacity for deep empathy, still holding on to your humanity after walking through the fires of psychological hell, is absolute, undeniable proof of your terrifying biological resilience. You are not a victim of their chaos. You are the unbreakable survivor of a war they could never win. The era of your compliance is officially dead. The labyrinth has been burned to the ground. You have learned the lethal mechanics of the red cape. You have mastered the temporal rift of the 5 seconds. You have forged the phantom strike to let their spears pass through empty space. And you have performed the ultimate agonizing sacrifice of the absolute void, assassinating your ego's need for vindication. You are no longer a participant in their pathetic game. You are the silent, untouchable architect of your own empire. So I leave you with one final, visceral reality to confront as the screen fades to black and you step back out into the heavy noise of the world. Tomorrow morning, the ghost will attempt to knock on the iron gates of your mind. The predator will wake up and the red cape will be waved. A subtle provocation, a twisted narrative, or an unexpected passive-aggressive strike will slide into your reality, desperately trying to drag you back into the mud. The narcissist will test the perimeter, searching for the exhausted, vibrating prey they use to control. When that strike echoes through the silent courtyard of your consciousness, who exactly is the entity that will stand at the gates? Will you lower your head like a beast in the slaughterhouse, charge the red cape, and bleed your vital energy into the void to defend your fragile pride? Or will you stand in the temporal rift, execute the absolute silence, and watch the predator slowly starve to death on their own toxic poison? The choice is yours. The path is open. Amituofo.